3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey, mighty ho. Welcome to the Monday interview edition of the Dennis and Andy Show. I'm Andy.
And I'm Dennis. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
You didn't let me finish I was going to say I'm Andy Longmeat Smith.
No, there's a reason why I cut you off.
Oh. Rude.
And I am Dennis Turner, the comic book appraiser. I'm very similar to the guy from The Simpsons, the comic book guy.
That's his superpower. I can just hold up a comic book and Dennis will go 8.2. Hold up another one, he'll just look at it and be like 5.4. And he just nails it all the time. That's how good he is.
Except for the fact that 8.2 and 5.4 are not real grades, so I think we already caught him.
8.2 is not a real grade?
Nope. 8.0, 8.5. There's no
8.0. The worst was he walked in on me when I was in the bathroom and he's like, oh my God, 1.0. And I was like, dude, come on.
Yeah, I don't know how that ties in with long meat.
I was like, it's cold in here. Long meat just goes by the type of food I like. Big, fat, long steaks.
There we go.
Yeah, that's all. I don't know what you're thinking.
Chicken.
Smut
mind. I was thinking chicken.
Smut mind. Once again, shout out to my daughter for that fantastic intro she made for us. She's awesome. Love her so much for making that. Of course, we did have to pay her, but that's okay. I don't mind.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get this show on the road. Our guest tonight is the one, the only. You know him from books like Wonder Woman and Conan, Excalibur, and if you want to go way back in time, what he's really known for, The Sludge, Aaron Lopresti.
What an introduction, man.
He is known for The Sludge.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. You forgot Planet Hulk, you know.
Planet Hulk. I did forget about
a movie out of that. So, you know.
Hopefully. Yeah, did you I didn't even, you know what? I didn't even look at the end of the credits. Did you get a special thanks or anything at the end of that? No.
And I called Marvel very upset, and they compensated.
Did you really?
For my disgrace, for my disappointment, they compensated me, but that still doesn't give me screen credit, which is what I really wanted. So, excuse me.
Wow, you did. You called them, huh?
I did. Well, because they did before that. There was they released like an animated version of Planet Hulk.
Oh yeah.
I've got it.
Yeah, and it says in the intro, it says based on the series by Greg Pak and Carlo Paglione, and nowhere is my name on there, and I drew almost half of that entire series. That's
what I was going to say.
Like less than 20 pages more than I did in that whole thing, and I'm like, how does that not get some credit?
Yeah.
But none, and to make matters worse, they actually interviewed me on the special features DVD of the animated movie, and I've got no credit in the film.
Wow.
Like, why are you talking to me if I, So I called them on that, and they're like, oh, really sorry, we should have had your name on there, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, okay. Then the movie came out, and they skipped me again, and so I was like very upset. So.
And worse, on the DVD where they have his name, kind of like you see on the screen, Lefty Lopresti, it said Carlos Paglione. So
yep, that's
even worse. Yeah,
that's really terrible.
So they even tagged him wrong.
I'm the Robbie.
Hey there, Jay Lee. Thank you for joining. Well, let's get into it because so Aaron and I have known each other for about 20 years. We met at CrossGen, but I don't know if we ever talked about this. I know you went. And correct me if I'm wrong, you went to film school, right?
That's correct.
Because it wasn't your focus after high school and stuff wasn't comic books. It was obviously film, right?
Well, I had
or what? You tell us.
Well, I had a sort of strange journey. My biggest problem my entire life is I've had so many different interests, in terms of creative interests and outlets. And, when I was real little, I wanted to be an animator, right? So I was drawing Flintstones and Popeye and all that kind of stuff. And then I discovered comics when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10. And I just thought they were the coolest things in the world, right? And so that was like all I did. That's all I drew. That's all my focus was on comic books. And then what was it? I think it was, and I've always been a huge film fan, always a huge film fan. And in 1981, when Raiders came out, I went and saw that, and I thought that if you could make movies like that all the time, that would be a blast, right? And we happened to have a film class in our high school. We had an English teacher who grabbed all the when they switched over from 8mm to video. They used to film all the football games and basketball games with 8mm film, right? But then about 1980 or whatever, when video came in, they switched over to video, and so they weren't using the cameras anymore. So this English teacher took all the film cameras that the school had, which was like 5 or 6, and started a film production class in our high school. And so I took that with another friend of mine, and we made him film and won an award. And so I really started thinking in those terms, and really got into pursuing film. And then that journey led me to USC Film School, but I didn't get out of film school and walk right into becoming the next Spielberg. And so I sort of had a bit of a change of heart and thought, because I promised myself if I went to film school, I was not going to spend the rest of my life editing Taco Bell commercials. That's not what I went there for, right?
Right.
It was like I was going to be a writer director, or I wasn't going to do it. And it just, I read scripts at TriStar for a while and did some other things. And, we were, when I say we, I mean all the rest of my classmates and stuff. We're out there, doing interviews, trying to get jobs. And to get a production assistant job back then, everybody wanted them, right? You could get on a film, but they paid like $250 a week living in LA. Even in the late 80s, that was nothing.
Oh, no,
right?
That's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like, how am I supposed to even live off that? So it just was kind of like, do I really want to spend the time it's going to take and kiss the butt that's going to take to work my way up? And I just kind of soured on the whole experience, and started at that point about 1988 or so trying to get into comics. And it dawned on me, I'd been at film school down in LA since 85, and it just dawned on me. I was like, hey, the San Diego Comic Convention is just down the road. Why have I never gone to this? So in 1988, I started going, and of course I haven't missed one since, except for the COVID thing, canceled it. Yeah. And, so I'd make up samples and show them. And, that sort of became the whole process of trying to get into comics and leaving film behind.
But did you keep drawing while you were in film school, or did you kind of stop for those few, like how long was film school? Years.
I was in there for, well, it's kind of like a 2 to 3 year program, depending.
Sure.
And where you're just taking film classes, right? I mean, It's like anything else. You go in for a 4-year degree, but the first 2 years, you're mostly taking general ed classes to get those out of the way, right? Then the last 2 years is total 100% focus on your major. And that's how kind of how film school was. But I got all my general eds out of the way before I transferred to USC, because I knew I couldn't afford to go for 4 years. I couldn't even afford to go for 2.
Sure.
I was there for 2.5 years. And, but once I got out of high school and went to college, I went to Oregon State for a year, and then I went there as a business major of all things.
Aaron, did you run into Mr. Lee back in '88? That was the first time he went. I'm just curious. Maybe you guys butted heads or saw each other, because it was smaller back then.
As I recall, we got in a fight over an Amazing Spider-Man 14 that a guy had for sale, and
I believe
Who
it.
won?
Well, he hit me from behind with like some sort of like a fire extinguisher or something, and totally knocked me out, and he must have got it. It was a total cheap shot. But
that's awful.
Yeah, so I didn't do a whole lot of drawing while I was in college. So
yeah, that was my question, because so you drew and drew, because you never went to art school. You just had art classes and high school stuff like that, I assume. So
Well,
you're all self-taught basically, not
yeah,
counting high school.
right. What happened was I would take an occasional class while I was in college, either a life drawing class or a painting class or something like that. But I wasn't spending the time I needed to really develop my skills. And so by the time I got out of film school, which was 88, and was thinking, well, I need to start, pursuing a career in comics or art or whatever. I literally had hardly drawn at all for 6 years. So I was drawing
Wow.
like a 19-year-old instead of a 25-year-old. How old was I? Yeah, 25. And so I was really 4 or 5 years behind in my development where I should have been. So that's why, when I broke in, I just, I sucked. My early work is just horrendously bad. And I've been able to get better, obviously, but I was on this this late curve,
Yeah, but still not having, because like in 88 is when I started the Kubert School and went there for the 3 years and was, from when I was a kid up until graduating the Kubert School, I just was drawing all the time.
Yeah.
So for somebody that, at 19 or no, wait, how old were you in 88? What did you say in 88?
Yeah, 24. I was 20. See, I took a job. I moved back home to Portland. I did a couple jobs for like Blackthorn Publishing. I don't know if you guys remember those back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And moved back home. And it took me a year back home just doing, I was just working for an agency, that would place you in just crappy jobs. And I finally hooked up with a commercial art studio in Portland in 1990. And because I left film school in December of 88. And then I had that whole year at home where I was just doing nothing, working odd jobs and stuff. And of course, running into everybody you went to high school with who was doing something.
Sure.
And you go, hey, what are you doing, Aaron? Nothing. It was a great moment in my life. But so then about February of 90 is when I hooked up with this commercial art studio in Portland, and they looked at my portfolio and they're like, yeah, I think we can use you. And so then I basically got a lot of training there in commercial art while I was trying to break into comics. And so, but it really, honestly, when the first job I got for Marvel was like 1990 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just really crap. But it took me past 95, probably wasn't until 95 or 96 where I felt like I was really doing decent work. So there was like that 5-year period in there where I was just desperately trying to develop my skills and figure out I always felt like in my mind that I could be really good, but it wasn't coming out on the paper, So it took the time to just get my skills to a level where I could compete with people.
I think a lot of guys start out and there's definitely the few that their first couple out of the gate, you're just like, oh my God, but I think in our generation, because, I started in 91, I felt the same thing. I even went into it thinking like, okay, I got a job. I don't know why I got a job because these samples, I can see what's wrong with them, but they gave me a job.
Right.
But, I guess it'll be that 7 or 8 year mark when I'll settle in, that's what I thought, 5, 7 year mark, whatever, where I'll just settle in. I also had the not misconception, but I did think that, 25, 30 years down the road, I'd be one of those guys sitting down going, 2 pages a day, 3 a day, no problem, which is total bunk. I can barely get 1 done a day as it is. So that never flourished and happened. But I did go into it thinking it's going to be a few years before I settle in and work out kinks and stuff,
Yeah, I didn't have a very clear concept of what it was going to take or, how long it was going to take to get where I needed to be. Because I was one of those guys who grew up in a situation where I was always the best artist in my class or the best artist in school. But that's a far cry from when you start competing against people on a national or an international level.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so you go in there thinking you're pretty good and you find out pretty quickly that you're not. And
I heard Portland. Are you from Portland?
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up in Portland. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. My original dream was, to graduate high school and then move to New York and just try to get into comics. And like I said, the whole film school thing sort of derailed my my original plans, or at least took them off track for a while. And so it was. I mean, if you look at my stuff when I was like 16 or something, you go, "Oh, yeah, that guy's pretty good. He's on track for know." Then you look at my stuff when I was 20, and you go, "Oh, he hasn't really progressed much from 16." And that's because I yeah. So that's the one thing that kind of bugs me, is that I should have, if I had just gone directly into comics or tried to get directly into comics, I would have been struggling around, 83, 84, and then maybe starting to move into a nice rhythm in 85 or 86.
Right.
And I would have been, 25, 26 years old, really hitting my stride, which is generally what happens with most people. But instead, I was, I was pushing 30 by the time I was, hitting stride, because I had, taken that detour. So I'm like I'm really kind of a misfit, because I'm like the guys that I broke in with, or, basically about the same time you did, Andy.
Right. Yeah.
Jerry Dodds and guys like that. I'm 10 years older than them. And I'm the same age as, I should have broke in with Art Adams and guys like that. But
Graham, you and Graham are around the same, and Bart, he's, Bart, I think Bart and Graham broke in at the same time. Well, they were in, the Kubert school together and stuff.
I was reading their comics while I was in film school instead of participating. You know what I mean? And so I just I've kind of got this, I'm just kind of this weird sort of on an island by myself, I guess, in terms of age, for where my career, for what, compared to when I broke in, I mean,
Yeah.
Late bloomer, I guess.
Yeah, because you're a few years older than, sounds like, Andy and I then, because I graduated in high school in 88 and started college and going into radio, TV, film. But, that would have been 89, 90 when I had started that. So, yeah, you're probably about 5 years older, it sounds like.
Yeah, I graduated high school in 82.
Come on. Show us some of that 16-year-old goodness, Lopresti.
The funny thing is, this is when I've always been kind of odd this way, because my dream as a kid, I was a huge Frazetta and Wrightson and Barry Smith fan.
Yeah, you can tell, yeah.
So I was into comics. I mean, I loved comics, but I was following their career paths, and they were guys that did very little comic work, but had a huge impact. Swamp Thing, Conan, right? Then they kind of went off and did their own self-publishing and tried to be like comic book fine artists, right? And so that was my plan. That was my blueprint. I was going to do what those guys did. So I've never. So I saved all of my artwork from when I was a kid. I've got stuff going. I mean, I've got literally a chest of drawers, every drawer full of artwork from when I was little to high school. And because I kept thinking, someday they're going to do the art of Aaron Lopresti, and I'm going to use this to show them what I did when I was 16, right? So I have all that stuff still sitting around here. So I've had a couple of people say that, because I had the rotator cuff surgery just 10 days ago, and I can't draw for essentially another month, that I should start showing some of my grade school and high school artwork on social media, since I can't produce anything new. So I might do that, because I have all of it.
Well, I mean, that was another thing I was thinking when the professionals rolls back around to my turn. What's up, Eric? Of doing, hey, getting a head count first, obviously, of all of us to say, do you guys have stuff from back then that you can show? Because I mean, I've got a bunch of that crap as well. That I don't care. I'll show it. What do I care? It'd just be kind of fun.
Yeah, the funny thing is about that stuff is you can go back and you can find something that you did when you were 12 that was just like really, really good, right?
Right.
And then everything else you did when you were 12 was just, it was embarrassing. You wouldn't show any, but everybody's got like that one piece and you're like, I don't know what happened on this day, but everything clicked and this turned out pretty good. And I'll show you that now. And I've got like, a few, most of my stuff is garbage, but there's a few drawings in there that are like, wow, that's way ahead of where I should have been, or, for whatever reason, everything just clicked on that drawing. And so, you pull those out. Those are the ones you show and everybody goes, wow, that guy was brilliant. When really,
well, did you ever see, I'm sure you've seen it, because he's posted it. Jusko's painting he did when he was like 17 or 18 for heavy metal. And you're just like, I don't know about you. When I was 17, 18.
Yeah, nothing like
I was
that.
awful. And I look at that painting. And Dennis, you know who Joe Jusko is, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got a bunch of his stuff.
He posts up like maybe once a year. Maybe it's an anniversary thing. I don't know. But he'll post up this painting he did for heavy metal, his first ever.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like 17 or 18. And you're just like, duh. Are you kidding me?
Have you seen Jerome Moore does the same thing? I don't know if you've seen Jerome or if you follow him on Facebook, but
oh yeah. He does too.
18, it's just like, oh, are you kidding me?
Well, because I remember him as I remember his name and stuff from the 80s doing comics. Yeah. And then he was just gone. And I had no idea it was because of animation.
Yeah, he did those. He did all those Star Trek covers. Those really good Star Trek covers. And then he went over and worked at Warner Brothers. And David Williams did the same thing. He was like did some stuff at the Ultraverse and was doing a few things here and there. But then they got into. I don't know if they're both in product design or something, but they were both at Warner Brothers. Getting full-time jobs doing design stuff for them.
Yeah,
and that's why they sort of disappeared from comics for that long period of time.
Right.
But yeah, Jerome's stuff was just freaking, I mean, he's 18 years. It reminds me of like looking at Neil Adams stuff when he was like 16 and you're going, wow,
So he just wants to see your earlier stuff because of the influences and stuff you mentioned to see. I mean, it'd be neat.
That's kind of what one of my questions was, we all tried. I tried, even as a kid, tried doing a comic book. I was a huge Star Trek fan, had a huge impact of manga back then, Robotech, Star Blazer, stuff like that. So I remember drawing my very first Star Trek manga and realized I can't draw, so I'm better stick to writing. But those are influences that I'm still a huge Trek fan, will always be. So, and then X-Men, everybody knows I'm an X-Men guy. So I loved everything from the early X-Men stuff. What were your early influences that really excited you and wanted, that you just felt the need to try and emulate and draw?
My first exposure to, I guess, fantasy art, if you want to phrase it like that, was I would always go to when I was little, my parents would go to the mall, right? Which when I was little, the mall were like new things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shopping malls were just coming into vogue, they were just new things. But they always had bookstores in there,
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have them drop me off at the bookstore and then they would go do whatever they do for an hour or 2 hours or whatever, then pick me up when they were done. And I would be looking at the paperback covers, most notably all the Frazetta stuff, of course, and all the Edgar Rice Burroughs Frazetta book covers, and then James Bauma's Doc Savage covers, and Boris at that time was just sort of getting into it, and that's when his stuff was really fresh and not all stiff and posed like it's been the last 20 years. But when it was more Frazetta like when he first started, and I guess it was it the Gore books, John Norman's Gore books that he did a series of book covers for that are just fantastic. But so I was looking at that stuff, and then around that time is when those Ballantine books, I think it was 77 or 78, the Frazetta Ballantine books started coming out.
Oh yeah,
The Art of Frank Frazetta, and it was all the painting.
Yeah, they were like this thick. They were thin. Yep.
Yeah, and so I would spend literally the whole, an hour, 2 hours in the bookstore looking at this stuff, and that's where I first stumbled on a comic book price guide. It was in a bookstore at a mall, and I was like, wow, these things are worth money, and but so my earliest influences were Frazetta, number one. And then I discovered, well, let me see. How did this go? I went through a stage where, I think we all did growing up. It was like Frazetta was my number one influence. And then when I discovered comic books, I had a stage where I was just loved Jim Starlin. So I was like copying Jim Starlin. And then Barry Smith, right? I do my own barbarian comic and kind of do Barry Smith. And then I had a John Severin stage I went through because I was a big Cole fan. And I was reading King Cole that Severin was working on, so I was doing like some Severin-esque stuff for a while. And then I discovered Wrightson. Probably all this was in retrospect because I didn't really start reading comics till 73 or 74. So Swamp Thing had already come and gone, but we had found some old bookstores in the Portland area, which used to be tons of that stuff. It's all gone now, but, and when I say we, I mean, like kids in the neighborhood, we would get on the bus or whatever and go down to Southeast Portland to these stores, and they would have these boxes just full of old comics, right? And so we'd go through there and we started collecting comics that way. And that's where I discovered Wrightson Swamp Thing. And so then this was probably 74, 75 by the time I discovered Wrightson. So he was working at Warren at the time. So I got all the Swamp Thing stuff and then started finding all of his comic book work and realizing there wasn't a ton of it. And then realized that he was actually doing work in the Warren magazines at the time. And so I was buying all those up and off the newsstands. And that was for probably from that stage on, from like 75, which would have made me 11 or 12 years old till about when I was 18. Wrightson was just everything. Whenever I needed to reference something, it was Wrightson. And by the time I was 18, my stuff was really starting to look like, I was a Wrightson clone, and which is one of the reasons I sold my entire Wrightson collection. Because I was like, every time it's like, how would I do this rock? How would I do these rocks? I go look and see how Wrightson did his rocks, and so everything I was doing was just basically swiping Wrightson style. And I was like, I realized I didn't think that was the way to go, right. So I totally cut myself off from him when I was 18 and started, trying to forge my own path stylistically. But my early stuff is, I was doing monster stuff, and we were reading Poe in junior high and high school, I'd gone Poe. So I was doing these really violent, gross drawings. And I'm sure if I did them in school today, I mean, they'd put me in they'd lock me away, put me in with a psychologist, and dismembered bodies, things like that, that was just, but I grew out of it.
You'd be triggering half your class with those things.
Oh,
well, I'm kind of surprised that Marvel hasn't called you if you're good at drawing rocks because, Star Wars, The High Republic, they're looking for somebody who can draw rocks really good to be their pilot.
I saw that and I was like, I thought it was a joke.
So did I. I think we all did.
Yeah. Quote the Raven says, Dennis, you should have kept drawing. I started out as a writer and basically forced myself to learn to draw because I couldn't afford artists. So there.
I never did. I went writing, but I channeled my energy into role-playing games. So I went into the Dungeons and Dragons route and I've been playing that since like 84. So we finished off an entire 6-year campaign before we moved to Charlotte here. And it's literally a novel. I mean, the guys were actually trying to talk to me about, hey, you should publish this. It's just good. So I just went different. So you're right. I was good at drawing the Starship Enterprise. So I'm good at technical stuff. But in terms of eyes, faces, nope, can't touch a human body. So yeah.
It's funny with Wrightson. I grew up on I loved his Swamp Thing. His Swamp Thing to me is still the way Swamp Thing should look, even though, you look at him today and the guys doing him today, he definitely does look more like it with all the vegetation and stuff. Cause Wrightson's Swamp Thing was pretty smooth with some big roots, but I still like drawing him that way. I don't care. And you know what? Kelly Jones does too. And I still love the way Kelly draws Swamp Thing. Yeah. I don't care that he's not all gunked up. I liked his Captain Stern. I thought that was fun.
His The Captain Stern stuff, the great one is the story that was in the 1980, the June issue, I think, of 1980 had the Captain Stern story in Heavy Metal magazine.
Yeah. And
in my opinion, my educated opinion, that's the last great thing that Wrightson did. I've
got a hardcover of Captain Stern. I would assume, because there's not that many of them.
Well, right? He did the series for, like, that miniseries for, I don't know who he did it for.
Yeah, later. But that's after what you're talking about, right?
Right. The Captain Stern story, the story that actually made it into the Heavy Metal movie, that story is in the June 1980 issue of Heavy Metal, and that's a great piece of work.
I think that's the one I have collected because it's a hardcover and it's magazine format. Dimensions. It's not comic book dimensions.
Captain Stern's on trial, and Hanover Fist is the witness against him, and he changes the big hulking thing and smashes it.
That's the one.
Somebody, there was a Wrightson, I don't know if you saw it or not, at San Diego maybe 2 years ago, because I know you don't go every year anymore, but it was a couple of years ago.
I've been going every year for about 20. So
okay. Somebody had a there was a Wrightson auction. It wasn't, I don't know if it was Frank Darabont or if it was a Heritage thing or what, but it was just down at the other end of the convention hall from where the artists are. There was over on the right-hand side, there was like an auction set up for just nothing but Wrightson stuff. Under glass, and it had, like, creepy and eerie splash pages, covers, but they had the entire Captain Stern story from that Heavy Metal there, the original art, and that was all hand colored, right? So it's all watercolored and everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely the one I have reprinted, because you can tell it's all hand colored, and
and man, I would have loved to get my hands on that, but don't have that kind of cash. I don't have.
I haven't
cash available.
I just hand colored something. Well, two things, because I don't hand color anything anymore.
Yeah.
And then right before Christmas, my niece was like, "Hey, could you, her son, he's a toddler. He loves Spider-Man, could you draw him as Spider-Man?" And I didn't want to just do a black and white drawing, so I did a watercolor. And I admit it, I was petrified because I have not hand colored anything in years. So I did it watercolor, and it's funny when I know I have to do something, it just, like, something just clicks. Like, you can't F this up. Whereas if I'm just bored one day and I'm like, "Oh, let me get some watercolors out," it's a mess. So I did that, and then a couple weeks ago, or last week, this dude contacted me through my website about doing a drawing. Him and his guy sounds like he's in his 30s, and him and his best friend came up with this goofy superhero when they were a kid, and for his birthday, he wanted to surprise him, have me do a drawing of it, whatever. And I could just tell from the email that instead of writing him back with, like, "Well, it's going to cost X amount and some big amount," I just wrote him back and it was like, "How much can you afford? Like, what are you looking to spend?" And he told me, and I said, "Well, that'll get you a 9x12 black and white, basically a con sketch." And he's like, "Well, how much to color it?" So I thought, well, I got my Copics and I haven't used them in a while, and I've got colored pencils. Yeah, what the hell? So I wrote him back and I said, "It'd be this much more to color it." So he's like, "You know what? I'm going to talk to his fiance." Long story short, him and his fiance split it. They said, "Go ahead." So now I've got this pressure because I know I'm going to color this original, and when I ink it, I can't mess it up because I can't use whiteout. When I ink it, there was a time in my career where I prided myself on not using whiteout.
Right.
And I could pretty much do a piece, no problem, no whiteout touching it. Yeah. And I just got to a point where I'm like, whiteout's my friend, I don't care. And every piece I inked, I was like, there's going to be whiteout on it. Yeah. Like, I was just like, there's going to be whiteout on it. It just doesn't matter, So, so with this thing, after I had it, I light boxed it so it'd be nice and clean. And I experimented on a scrap sheet of paper, penciling something real quick, and then coloring it, because I thought, well, maybe I'll color it and then I'll ink it. But I did that, and then I tried to erase, and some of the pencil wouldn't erase because of the marker, I guess, over top. So I was like, okay, looks like I'm going to ink it first. So I inked it, no mistakes, at least nothing large enough for whiteout, and colored it with Copics and colored pencil and scanned it, shot it to the guy. He was like, oh my God, this is great, whatever. So it was just, I can't remember why I brought that up. My mind's a fog, but it's just weird.
Sometimes that's when you kind of bring it together. It's
because I see you post all the time. You're like, oh, here's this commission. It's colored pencil and a little bit of marker, and I'm like, good God, how does he do this without messing up?
One of the great things I learned in commercial art when I worked in the commercial art studio is how to fix mistakes, and I do corrections. I mean, I have to say, I'll pat myself on the back. I'm brilliant at doing corrections on original art so that you might not even know without inspecting it that. So there's very few of those things that don't have a little bit of white out on them and stuff.
Really?
And touch it up afterwards to kind of fool the eyes. They don't really know that there's anything there. I mean, if you're looking for mistakes, you can go, oh, there's a little bit right there. But most people aren't. If you look at it, it looks fine. And so
I'll have to get with you later. I'll get with you later and find out what paper you're using and whiteout.
Sounds like.
Yeah, I need to find that stuff out. Look, Art Bear's in the house. Lefty would love to get his hands on that thing. You heard it here, folks. Uh-oh.
What is
Lefty long meat.
Oh my God.
And Dennis, you need to get the hell out of there fast.
So Art, why do you think we're doing this remotely?
That's right. If Dennis was over here, he'd experience long meat.
So Art, at the beginning of the show, Andy found a place on the internet where you get your name and it's, first and last name. So of course his came out on the favorable side. So he had to post it. Mine did not. So I'm boycotting it.
I'm an innocent victim. I have no idea what these guys are talking about. I don't know why Art. I'll tell you why Art's coming after me is because he's older than I am. And it really bugs him that he's the old man in the industry. That's why. So he's targeting me, but I'm an innocent bystander, right?
So wait, have you ever bought some of your rights and stuff back? Because here's a good job. That graphic novel, the Spider-Man one. Remember that? You don't like that job?
It's okay. Look at you guys. There's two Wrightsons, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend Wrightson fans because I'm a huge. There's no bigger Wrightson fan than I am, but I'm realistic about it. There's pre-1980 Wrightson and there's post-1980 Wrightson, and they are not the same thing. And
I would go. I know what you're saying because I just picked them up. Dennis and I went to this con over the weekend, a little one-day show, and I've been getting a little nostalgic. Now this is post because I picked up, for instance, it was written by Starlin and Bernie drew it, and it was that POV Punisher miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And I just picked up, for instance, the Batman Aliens that Ron did with him.
Mm-hmm.
But you can definitely see a difference, and I think part of it is it was weird to me seeing Bernie draw superhero stuff because I don't think of him that way. Even like that thing he did at DC, the Weird, the Weird fit into what he does, but no, the other superheroes.
Right.
And
love the Weird.
Yeah, it was fine. It just wasn't great. I mean, Wrightson set such a standard for himself even his Swamp Thing stuff, you go look back at it, some of the pages are incredible.
Right.
Some of them are but you get to when he started working at Warren about 1974, that stuff's incredible. And you go from 1974 right up to that he did his Frankenstein stuff between 77 and 79.
Sure.
Okay. And then that Captain Stern story in 1980 was the last great vintage Wrightson thing he did. And I don't know what happened. But everything he did post that, Cycle of the Werewolf, even the Creepshow book, it's not as good. And it's because his drawing is not as good as it was earlier. And I think that's probably just because he got to a point where he's like, this is commercial art. I'm getting paid to do this. And there's always that point in all of our careers when at a certain age where you're like, I'm a fine artist. This stuff's got to be brilliant. Everything I do has got to be brilliant. And I think he was in that stage for about 6 to 8 years. And then he did such incredible stuff. It's like, how do you keep up that level of energy for another 20 years? You know, you kind of settle in, and I think he's settled in. And that's not to say he didn't do some good stuff here and there,
no.
but it's not on the same level as the stuff he was doing in the mid to late 70s. It just isn't.
Yeah, well, no, you're right. I mean,
rights into rights. I'm not comparing rights into other people. I'm comparing him to himself.
Right. Well, and I think part of it too is, he was younger, you know, obviously. I don't know what the deadlines were like on Swamp Thing. I mean, was Swamp Thing monthly at that time, or was it bi-monthly?
But he was penciling it.
Right. So that's a big difference, being bi-monthly. Yeah. And then, like you said, you get into the 80s, and there was a shift probably just in the comic industry itself from a professional standpoint, where it's like, look, man, you want the job, meet the deadline. I don't give a crap who you are.
Yeah.
You know, that could be it.
The 70s were really a renaissance in the comic book industry. You had stuff going on. I mean, that's when the illustrators came in, and he was one of them, right?
Well, plus look at the pressure with the studio he was sharing with.
Yeah.
You can't hack shit out in that studio.
Right. And there was a big push for comic artists to become fine artists, in a sense that they were creating art portfolios, limited edition prints. And that had to be like really good stuff. You couldn't just hack it out because people weren't going to buy it, right? And you get into the 80s, and the 80s to me were sort of, you know, kind of like this Jim Shooter era where superhero comics came back in vogue. The 80s were very much like the 60s in terms of comic books. And they went back to being superhero centric. And it wasn't so much about illustration as it was about comic book superheroes. And that's not to say there isn't, you know, like Art Adams and Jim Lee and all those guys did great stuff. But it was different. You know, they weren't trying to be illustrators. They were trying to be really good comic book artists.
Right.
And I just think there was a different mindset and a different approach for that era than there was in the 70s.
Well, no, and I totally agree. And you said it. Those guys wanted to be good comic book artists. And there's definitely a mindset when you're looking to be a good comic book artist. When you're looking to be a good illustrator like those guys were, you can just look at every panel. And it's just gorgeous. I mean, look at Rudy Nebres in the 70s, you know, and you're just like, oh my God, every panel is just gorgeous. Even if it's just a freaking close up, he'd have foliage in the background that was just gorgeous, you know. But then when it comes to comic book art, and I think Kubert even taught kind of this way, is you pick and choose your battles on the page.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I do remember Kubert saying when I was in school that you do want to have, unlike, you know, Kubert and Kirby were contemporaries, you know, age-wise. But I mean, Kirby was a little bit older, like 10 years older. But my point is, Kirby, at the height of his game, was the 6-panel, 4-panel grid guy. Kubert was never that. Kubert was always find that anchor on the page. You know, find that most important pop of storytelling, whether it's a big close-up, whether it's a big action panel, you know, but something interesting on the page. And I remember Joe saying, because somebody's going to pick up a comic and flip through it, and it doesn't matter what page they stop on, it should be, whoa. And it's hard to do that when it's a 6-panel grid, even if it's Kirby.
Right.
I mean, Kirby had the advantage because his storytelling was, and his panel layouts was so dynamic that a 6-panel grid would make you stop compared to, you know, somebody else doing a 6-panel grid.
Right.
And that's it. And that's the difference. Whereas the Wrightston and Kaluta and those guys are like, every panel's a masterpiece.
Right.
You know, and you can't do a monthly book that way.
No. It's very, very difficult. And those guys were all inking their own stuff too, you know, so they were.
Well, that's it too. Yeah.
They were total control of their art. You know, when we're doing a monthly superhero book, you know, you hope that you get an inker that, you know, even if you get a great inker, they may not ink it, might not have the same subtleties in the same spots that you want them to have it. You know what I mean? So it's like you're turning it over to somebody else for a different interpretation. So it's to try and, you know, look at it like some sort of illustrative or fine art process, it's really difficult because it's an assembly line commercial art project, and you do the best you can, but you don't always have control over how it comes out.
Right. Right.
So,
What oh yeah, Dennis wants to talk X-Men because he loves X-Men. So go ahead.
I got a horrific story about that, but go ahead.
Oh no, I always bring it up. So I'm an X-Men. Everybody knows that. So I always try and pull stuff. Andy and I were having a discussion right before we got on, because he goes, he did Wizard 1/2, and I was like, Wizard 1/2, and I'm like,
X-Men. It was the Ultimate X-Men book.
It was the Ultimate.
Yeah, Jeff Johns wrote.
Okay. Oh, Jeff Johns wrote that?
Yeah. Danny,
I didn't know that.
It's a really.
I knew Danny inked it.
Yeah.
I know I have it somewhere, but Dennis, you don't have that? You have everything X-Men.
Well, I don't know. You said X-Men 1/2, and I'm like, I don't think he did. So I went and grabbed my 2 copies of the Wizard X-Men 1/2, and I'm like, no, he wasn't in it. And then right before we got on there, he goes, it might have been Ultimate. It had Ultimate in the title. So he goes, we got to remember to ask Aaron.
Yeah, it was a Wizard exclusive order, but it was it has like Cyclops on the cover, and it's really unfortunate because Danny, I penciled it and Danny inked it, and it's just the ink job on it is just nuts, because you know how Danny does it, right?
Oh yeah,
and it looks really, really cool. And then they digitally painted over the top of it, so none of the line work is there.
Oh, the cover, yeah.
Like,
I know,
but it's I think it's like 16 pages. I don't even think it's 20 pages. It may be some of the best superhero work I've ever done. And then, of course, I had one of the best inkers working on it, and a Jeff Johns story. And that was before Jeff Johns was Jeff Johns. He was just sort of coming into his own time. But it's funny, those X-Men issues you brought up. I was in a period of coming out of a period of kind of being blacklisted at DC because of the abysmal failure of Tachyon, a series I did for them. And I was having a hard time finding work anyplace. And I somehow hooked up with Mark Powers and Pete Franco, who were the X-Men editor and assistant editor at the time. Showed him some samples at San Diego, talked to him on and off. And finally, they threw something my way. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I ended up doing those issues of, I don't know, those 2 or 3 issues of X-Men, right? Mm-hmm. And Pete Franco literally said this to me, right? So here I am this would have been, 98-ish. Yeah. Well, it was actually just before I went to CrossGen, so it would have been 99, 2000, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? So here in my mid-30s, I've been kind of up and down, had some success with Sludge, disappeared for a while, did some series that didn't turn out well, and, kind of struggling. And so I do these X-Men issues, and Mark Morales inked them, so they looked really nice, and they were really strong issues. And, of course, I really made sure I did the best job I could on them. And so Pete Franco says they were super happy with what I was doing, right? And I think at that time I'd already done the X-Men 1/2. In fact, I think I did that first, and they were so blown away with it. They're like, hey, they gave me some X-Men issues actually to do. And Morales inked them and did a really terrific job. And Pete Franco says, I'm talking on the phone about the future and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, we are grooming you, Aaron, to be the next great X-Men artist.
No way.
That's a quote, right? And so he's like, I'm sitting here telling my wife, I'm like, this is it. I've made it. I'm in. I'm going to be, the next Jim Lee or Andy Kubert or whatever. These guys are going to promote the crap out of me. I'm going to be on X-Men. And then, not a couple days after that conversation, they both got fired.
No!
Oh, no way!
And I was totally out with, that's it. The black and white piece is really, really nice. That looks like crap, in my opinion.
I've never seen the black and white piece to this. I can't believe they actually had it inked as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool looking, and then it's just not now. But Yeah, so this was me and Danny Mickey getting after it. And
So I knew the Scarlet Witch was in it.
oh yeah.
Does this ring a bell, Dennis?
Yeah, I know I don't have the black and white variant. Then I'm sure I've got that one because I actually had to go back and collect the Ultimate X-Men. I'd gotten the first run on it, but the second, and I went and had finished that one off. So yeah, I think I've got almost all the Wizard, the special Wizard issues and stuff. So 99% sure I've got it.
I'm pretty sure I still have it too, because I remember seeing this. I had to have seen this before I met you and really digging it.
Yeah, because
this could have been this. I'm trying to remember what I showed the guys at CrossGen when I brought your name up to them. It might have been this. I don't remember though.
The X-Men stuff was the most recent, because after that, that's when I went to CrossGen, because I had just got back into the industry and things were looking great. And then those guys got canned. But here's the reason why they got canned. Okay, so I'm sitting at a show next to Ethan Van Sciver in a Phoenix show several years ago, right?
Yeah.
And he's telling the story how he was, I can't remember what his reason was, but he was pissed off at Mark Powers for something. Thought Mark Powers was a real dick, right? So he worked in some swear words or something into one of the panels.
Oh, yeah. Well, didn't he write sex all over it in one issue or something?
Something like
that. Something like that. And
Powers, of course, didn't catch it. And so he was bragging that he got him fired. Ethan was. And so as I leaped across the table with my hands around his neck, telling him, "You ruined my freaking career, you a-hole." And so I don't know how much of what Ethan did actually got them fired or whatever, the whole story was, but he claims he takes credit for getting Mark Powers fired. So
wow,
Ethan's responsible for my up at CrossGen, I guess, not being the next great X-Men artist. But and here's another side note to that. After I did that Ultimate X thing, I shouldn't speak ill of people, but I don't care. I'm going to. Ralph Macchio.
He's retired.
Yeah, I know, but he's a jerk. And he called. Get a load of this. We still had answering machines back in the day, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I was out. I come back, my machine's blinking, right? And I'm like, wow, okay, let's see who left me a message. I push the old button, and it's Ralph Macchio. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, Aaron, I just looked at the Ultimate X-Men 1/2 thing you did for Wizard. That was really nice work. I couldn't believe how good it was. I just wanted to call you and let you know how good I thought it was." And then he says this. He goes, "But this doesn't mean I'm going to be giving you any work."
No way.
That's exactly what he said. What a prick. Okay.
So what's the point of that call?
Huh?
I think Dennis and I said, yeah, Dennis and I literally said at the same time, what's the point of that call?
To mess with me. That's what he did. He did this to people all the time.
Oh my God. I had, it was in 97. Yeah, probably 97, 98. I was doing stuff in the X office, and Mark Powers was like, I'm going to have you bounce around from issue to issue to help fill in, and then hopefully get you on something steady. And I was like, oh, that's great. And that's why I helped out on X-Men 350, and I did the issue of X-Force and an issue of X-Factor and those strong guy books and stuff. And he was always like, yeah, you just do this and I'll get you on. Never came to fruition. So,
how many of our careers got stories like that, though, right?
What did we think of the Alex Ross portraits? I mean, I thought the portraits were awesome, and
What do you mean?
Well, there was a month. What was it? How long ago was that, Dennis? That Marvel did that?
Middle of this last year. It was the 32 portraits.
So Marvel had variant covers, and they were bust shots of different Marvel characters. And
how do I not know this? I mean, I'm clearly not paying attention.
Well, here's what the big picture is. He actually did full figures for them all, because up in the Marvel office, kind of like DC used to have with all the different artists, it's all Alex Ross, all these full figures of like the 30 some characters of the Marvel universe standing there.
But he had done those a while back.
But they took them and cropped them as busts for variant covers for like a month. So, I mean, they're gorgeous. I mean, it's Alex Ross.
It's Alex Ross. I mean, I got all the X-Men ones. I picked up a few of the other characters I like, but I didn't get all 32 of them just because I didn't care about a lot of the other stories at that point.
Right.
I didn't even know this happened. So I have no, I mean, I assume, like you said, it's Alex Ross, so I assume they're great. I don't know.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
Do you remember back in, probably would have been the mid 80s. Dennis, you must remember this. It depends on how into collecting Andy was. I don't know, but there was a month where all the Marvel books had the close up of the headshot, and it was and it had the border around it, had all the little characters. So there'd be like Daredevil had a headshot, Spider-Man had a headshot, Thor.
Yep.
Remember those? I thought those were cool.
Yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah.
Those are awesome. I can't remember who drew the border. Did John Romita Sr. do the border, or was it a compilation of just a bunch of different stuff?
I'd have to go pull one out of my collection because I can't remember, but that was the kind of stuff they used to make. They used to give to Paul Ryan, to do stuff like that too. He might have been somebody who had done that.
I don't know though.
But those were the things that they started thinking about for collectors, because when they did something like that, they went, oh. And then they did like the 25th anniversary borders and stuff, and then that became a big thing. And yeah,
because I can vividly remember the Walt Simonson heads that he did.
Yep.
For those covers. I'm trying to think of other ones that stand out.
Factor, didn't he? Didn't he do Cyclops for X Factor?
Yeah.
Thor head.
Thor,
Spider-Man, which I think was probably Ron Friends, but I'm not 100% sure, on Web. And then the Daredevil portrait, I remember really liking that. I think that was Simonson, although I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. It may not have been.
That doesn't ring a bell to me. I mean, the question's for you, Aaron, but that name doesn't ring a bell.
No, I don't.
I know I know Nightman. I remember that.
I know the characters.
Right.
Kyle. I know Kyle's stuff.
Yeah.
From back then and obviously now, but that name doesn't ring a bell at all.
No, I don't remember that.
I'm trying to remember who drew the Captain America head. What's that?
I was going to say, the Captain America head, that was Zach, wasn't it?
Was it Zach? He was already off the book, I think, at that time.
Oh, no, it was, I want to say.
It wasn't Kieran Dwyer, was it?
I think Rubenstein inked it. I'm trying to think of who was he over. I remember that I can see the picture in my head. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I remember those. I used to have them all.
I think Kieran Dwyer. It might have been.
It could have been, yeah. It could have been.
I didn't get them all. The books I read, I picked up,
What's the favorite book you've worked on in your career? Not something you created.
Well, I mean, you'd have to say Planet Hulk, right?
Well, not really. I mean, it doesn't have to be your favorite. Danny Mickey inked that stuff too, right?
Yeah, him and Sandu Floria did. Danny couldn't keep up. I had to bend Danny's arm backwards to get him to do it because he was so busy. And I'm like, dude, this is like a big thing. You got to do it, And I couldn't get Matt Ryan because he had hooked up with Greg Land at the time after CrossGen, and so I was, constantly bouncing around with different inkers, and so he didn't have time to do it. So I really begged Danny to jump in and do it. And I said, okay, look it. I said, I know that you're going to farm this out to your stable mates. I said, but just ink the splash pages. Promise me you'll ink the splash pages. He said, okay. And so he did that. And then he had the rest of his crew, but
you don't know how to negotiate.
Huh?
You don't know how to negotiate. You don't go, just promise me the splash pages. You go, promise me every big figure of the Hulk. And then you work your way down.
Well, I don't know. I was trying to be realistic, because he was trying to get out of the job completely, and I'm like,
oh, was he really?
Yeah, because he was just like, I can't. And he finally did, but then it took about an issue. The first issue that Sandu did was kind of hit and miss, but the last issue, he really nailed it, and it's got some really cool stuff in it. So, but my favorite job ever, I had a string when I was drawing Ms. Marvel, a storyline that had MODOK in it that was just an absolute blast, just drawing MODOK all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, maybe I did a what if that was Avengers Disassembled.
I had that too. Yeah.
I did matte to ink, and that was fun because I got to draw practically every character in the Marvel universe. And to get an opportunity to do that was pretty cool. And also I did those Marvel Adventures. Remember that line they had that was supposed to be like a kid's line?
Yeah, you did covers.
Yeah, I did covers for Avengers, and I inked those myself, but there was like so many great characters on all the covers. Those were a lot of fun. Yeah, that probably, a single comic, probably that what if, because it's just
a good issue. Who inked that one?
Huh?
Who inked that one?
Matt did.
Oh, he did. Okay.
And I inked a couple pages because I caught him right in between something he was working on, and then he was getting behind, and so I ended up like there's like 4 or 5 pages in that issue that I actually inked myself.
Oh,
but
that's cool.
Most of it is his.
Zach and Rubenstein on the cap cover. That rings a bell.
Yeah, I called it, didn't I?
Yeah.
I get a no prize.
You get a no prize. Big fat no prize.
It'll be in the mail. From Andy when he sees you.
Actually, you know what? So remember we were talking to Graham about his Chinook brew?
Yes.
It occurred to me over the weekend, Helen's family's from Syracuse, and our niece and nephew and their kids are going to be driving down here at the end of this month. And I was like, oh my God, I can order it because it can only be shipped in state. And, he lives in Buffalo.
Right.
So I ordered 4 4-packs to my nephew's house in Syracuse. He's keeping 1. He's going to drive the other 3 down, and Dennis and I are going to split them.
Yes, I have not had one. We when we were on the air with them, we were talking, and we started this last Friday was our first one. We started doing a happy hour podcast. So I'm bringing a different beer every Friday, and mine are all dark, sludge, good wholesome stuff. And Andy likes the Zima kind of light stuff. And so we're each going to bring our own beer and talk. And I did say I really want, because I'm not going to make it up to New York anytime soon. I never tried the Chinook brew, and Andy found a way to bring him. I'm like, well, as soon as we get him, we're going to do a Chinook brew on a Friday then.
That's right. So,
well, Graham is a bit of a beer snob. So if he
is, well, so's he. So's Dennis.
I am.
If he gives it the thumbs up, that's probably pretty good. I got into dark beer many moons ago for a while, and I remember trying to get my dad to drink some of it, and he was like, "This is crap," because he was kind of like a Bud Light kind of Coors Light guy,
Yeah. And, my dad would drink red, white, and blue, and
my dad was Miller Lite. He called it the nectar of the gods, and I'm like, seriously, Dad, I urinate things with more flavor than that. I couldn't stand it. I'm from Wisconsin, so I do bratwurst, and I will take Miller Lite, and that's what I boil my brats in there because it's not good for anything else. And he would never touch. He tried a Guinness Stout once. And he took 1 sip and threw it down. He goes, nope, I'm done. Give me my Miller Lite.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. My dad would go to Reno every once in a while. And he was, and the funny thing about my dad was he was not a drinker really at all. I mean, he'd drink a beer every once in a while, but he was not, he didn't really drink that much. But he would come back with just cases of like hard alcohol and stuff because it was cheap and on sale or in Reno, and he'd drive it back. And so when he passed away 7 years ago, he had this cabinet full of like liquor, that he'd never opened. Like, was probably pretty valuable, but he would always bring back Foster's Lager because they were in these big oil can size.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
I remember that.
And he would bring those back, and he would drink the Fosters every once in a while, So that was like his exotic beer. But boy, if I tried to get him to drink a dark beer or something, he would have none of that, man.
Schlitz.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. I remember Schlitz and Schmitz.
Oh, I was going to say, I grew up 60 miles north of Milwaukee. So it was Miller Lite, Schlitz, Blatz, Pabst Blue Ribbon. I mean, that is Milwaukee, old Milwaukee. Matter of fact, in college, it was half barrels of old Milwaukee for $22 at every party. That's why it only cost us $2 all you could drink for walking into a party, because it was.
Yeah.
Dennis, do you have this?
Of course.
Here's a story along these lines. They had Gary Frank doing a cover for this, and I said, nope. I said, no, I like Gary's stuff a lot. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I go, I'm doing the cover. And I don't know where I got the balls to act like that, because I don't act like that now, but I did then. And they're like, okay. So they let me do a new cover, even if they'd already paid Gary Frank to do one.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, Gary's done a couple covers.
I got to draw. Look at that, man.
I know.
Big vision shot. It was awesome.
No, this is a fun book. Oh my God, she looks like a woman.
I kept this page.
Oh, it must be an older book.
She looks like a woman. Have you seen what she looks like now?
I know, it's disgusting. I can't even.
Yeah.
She has muscles and boobs and looks like a woman.
And she's raging here because if you remember back during this period of time, when she got really enraged, she'd get a little bit hulked up.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I got to draw everybody in that page, and I was like, wow.
Yep. Yeah, dude. No, it's
Spider-Man. Look at Spider.
I got this one. This is when she looked like a woman.
Yeah. I know. Ms. Marvel. Woo! Or was it Warbird at that time? Ms. Marvel, right?
Marvel.
Yep.
This is how
watched.
I got the Ms. Marvel series because they saw this and said, wow, you drew Ms. Marvel really well. So you want to do the series? I'm like, yeah, sure. Of course I do.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
we watched.
Who's your favorite character to draw? We all know Andy's favorite character, period, is Captain America. Mine obviously is Dark Phoenix. She's my girl. Who's your favorite character out of any of the universes?
Well, I can tell you who my least favorite character is like Iron Man, because I like drawing organic stuff, figure drawing.
Yeah,
obviously. And I don't like drawing. If I could draw Iron Man the way Gene Colan did, I'd be okay, because he didn't.
Well, you mean classic, just that classic armor, or?
Yeah, well, it's more like a bodysuit than it is armor, where the new
like Bob Layton and J.R. Jr. and stuff.
Hey, this page right here, I inked. This page,
I can tell. Yeah, I know. It's awful. Just leave it to the professionals, Aaron. I mean, for the love of God. Why do you think I'm scrolling past it so fast?
What a dick.
I'm trying to get to the good stuff that Matt did.
Yeah. My favorite character, wow. Let's see. Iron Fist wasn't in the story. I put him in there because I wanted to draw him.
No way.
Yeah, well, there was just a bunch of Marvel characters standing around, so I said, well, I'm going to make this Iron Fist. They're like, yeah, whatever. I really like drawing. I think Doctor Strange is really cool.
Oh.
I don't know. The Hulk, I'm a big monster guy, so the Hulk is like the ultimate monster superhero combination. Sure. I'm trying to think if I love Captain America, but he's not necessarily my favorite character to draw.
Not like this. Ugh.
I know. It's a challenge. And God, that is a tough question. I mean, people ask me that all the time, and well, Captain
America is, Dennis said Captain America is my favorite. He's my favorite Marvel character, but he's not my favorite to draw.
Right.
But if I do draw him, I'm like you. I would rather do it the way Zek did his chainmail, with just the side, indication of it.
Who I really sort of fell in love with was Superman. When I started drawing him in Justice League, I really sort of got into a rhythm with him, and really I kind of dug drawing Superman. I'm not as much a fan of drawing Batman as you think I might be for someone who's like a monster fan. I like drawing Batman, but I don't know. Superman, I there's something about that I thought was really cool. I would see. Okay, if someone said draw anybody you want, if I had to draw anybody, I'd probably draw the Green Goblin. How's that? But that's real. He's not going to get his own book, but in terms of fun things to draw,
right?
You know.
Yep. Very cool.
Dennis, got a question for Dennis. What comic book price guide book website would you say has the greatest credibility?
I want to know.
Well. So the problem is that's not a bullet point answer. Depends on what books you're talking about. If you're looking at Golden Age books, Overstreet is still probably where I turn to the most for it, just because you don't see a lot of them being sold. So there's not a lot of electronic footprints to do it. So Overstreet is not very good for hot books, or not very good for any of the modern stuff, because they fluctuate so much. Overstreet, they put their pricing out. It takes them 2 to 3 months to go to print. So by the time they actually come out in the shops, your data is already 6 months old, and hot books have already either escalated and shot up or gone down. I hate to say, for the modern books and stuff, your best bet is, realistically, and I'm not a fan of eBay. I really hate eBay. However, you can see what's sold and you can see where it goes. I subscribe because for appraisals and stuff for insurance companies, I pay for a database and stuff like that, which is relatively accurate. And we can see how many CGCs or PGXs or CBCSs are out there, things like that. So the new ones, I mean, if there's not a good print guide for them. Wizard was good for the Wizard magazine back in the day, was good because here's all your hot books. Well, everybody would run out and buy the hot books, look at which red went up, blue went down. So every red book people were going after. They at least had their fingers on the pulse, but yeah, I hate to say it, but you're digital on this. So Atomic Avenue, eBay,
what about
the website you use?
What about GP analysis? Do you use them?
So GP analysis has its benefits. Where I see it used mostly is for wholesalers. So they're looking at, this is I've got a 6.5. This is what's out there right now. These are what the last however many 6.5s is sold for. The average wholesalers tend to sell it off of that versus, it's typically more expensive than that for hot and new books.
What about?
But it's got its place.
What about
What's
Go
that?
Collect? Go Collect. Have you?
Go Collect? Yep. Go Collect is another one I would do. The problem is for like the newer stuff, there's not one source that I can sit down and say, you can just use that. There isn't one they all got their strengths and weaknesses. So like if I did a large Avengers collection, and like for the older stuff, I had to look here, I had to see what was sold here and here, then I kind of have to average them out. So right. If you're just a collector looking to go, those are all valuable tools, but there's nothing written in stone that really is what market value is for them. Well, and then what we see at the conventions also is you see convention pricing. So that's actually different than what you're seeing them go for. Although a lot more of the convention people are putting their pricing based off of eBay or Go Collect or something. It's usually the old school guys like me. I still have my Overstreet, and I'll pull it out for the Golden Age and I'll whip it out and do it. So again, it has its place.
All right, let me ask you something. And since we're talking about collecting for the moment, I've noticed on a lot of these auction sites, like I used to get a lot of books, or I do occasionally get books off Comic Link, and I used to find pretty good deals. But my initial thought was coming into 2020 that because of everything was shut down and people would probably be hanging onto their money a little tighter because of the uncertainty, that you might be able to get some good deals. I found just the opposite. Books are going through the roof right now. And I speculated it's because there's no conventions. People have this money that they want to spend at conventions, but they can't do it at conventions. So they're doing it on online auctions. Is that something you're seeing?
Absolutely a correct statement. Matter of fact, Andy and I went to the Hickory Con on Saturday, and we said, let's just skip the initial rush. and it opened at 10. We said, we'll get there at 11. Aaron, we got there. The line was out the front door, down the side, all the way down the side of the convention, all the way to the back still. And they had been open for an hour. We're like, oh my God, everybody is dying. They're tired of being shut down. So they came to spend money because they haven't been able to. So they've been going on eBay, Heritage, Comic Link, all of them. And that's where they're spending it. And right now it's a seller's market because people, you would think it's just the opposite because they're not unsure about the times. People are laid off, but nope, the collectors double down is what they did.
Yeah, and a few of our dealer friends, because there was another show in the opposite direction in South Carolina the same day, and they're both one-day shows. And so basically in a 3-hour radius, because it took us an hour to drive to this one, but if we went east, we could have drove 2 hours to the other. And, they were both packed, and dealers from both shows said that now that they're starting to do shows again, they're just amazed at how well they're doing.
Yeah. So a word to any of the showrunners out there, we've been showless for so long. Don't start piling them on the same weekend. Spread them out because I would have went to one and we would have went to the next one the following weekend had it been set up that way.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're going to see some of these prices that have been established drop, or do you think they're going to stay consistent up with where they are on?
I think it depends. I think it depends. Dennis, see if you agree with this. So let the non-expert go. I think it depends on the books. I think if it's Silver Age type stuff, if it's gone up because of some event or something like that, they stay up. But I think these hot things that kind of shoot up, like that West Coast Avengers with the white Vision on the cover, I just can't see that. As I can't see if you were like, oh my God, it's $1,500. I'm going to buy it now because it's going to keep going up. A year from now, you making any money on that book?
I'm talking more like conventional collectible books, Silver Age books, like say Spider-Man 40 or Spider-Man 39, right?
I think they retain or keep going up.
Do you think even though that because you're seeing high sales numbers on books like that, and I'm wondering, are we $200 or $300 inflated right now just because there's a lot of guys in the online market, or do you think it'll stay?
I'm going to say, honestly, I think right now they may stay or they may drop slightly for your ordinary Silver Age books. And I think what people are doing now is they are just filling in holes, kind of like what I did, but they're, instead of going to the show, they're just doing it. Right. I think your key books like your Fantastic Four 48, X-Men 1, 101, things like that. Avengers 57. I mean, Vision, anything with Vision and Scarlet Witch has been a hot commodity. I think those are going to continue to go up, all of your key books. I don't think they'll drop. Your anything that's hot related to anything. So I think your Falcon Winter Soldier stuff will start probably going up if the show's any good. I mean, that's what it's going to be predicated on, unfortunately. But I think your regular Silver Age stuff, I don't see it continuing to skyrocket and go up. If anything, I think it may plateau, maybe do a little bit of a dip as people start getting out and they start because a lot of people like to buy keys by holding them in their hands versus just hitting send and ship it and going, wow, that's not the condition I thought it was going to be in.
Right. Oh, interesting. Because I've been very cautious because I'm seeing prices that are very sort of aggressive on a lot of books that I'd be interested in, but I'm like, I think I'm going to wait a couple months and see if this will settle down a little bit, and maybe I can get it for a couple $100 cheaper than what it is right now. I'm talking, $1,000 books, that type of thing, not, $50 book here or there.
I thought you were more of, or unless this is what you're talking about, weren't you more of a Golden Age guy though? I thought you were.
Well, I've got
mostly. No,
not mostly. Mostly Silver Age and Bronze because Golden Age books are too freaking expensive. I mean, I get it when if I can get a deal, if I can find a book. I mean, there's books I'm looking for, but they're all so expensive that I just can't go out and buy them. You know what I mean? It's like I've got to either do a partial cash, partial trade to get them, or I have to save money for a while. Like I really want a Whiz 25 bad, but that book is an expensive book, even in a mid-grade. So
which one is it? What's on the cover? Why is it?
That's got
That's Captain Marvel, right? Yep.
Yeah, he's leaning against the turbine, but it has Captain Marvel Jr.'s first appearance in it. It's got that great CC Beck cover though too. It's one of the, I picked up a Whiz 22, which is where Captain Marvel has his arm around Billy Batson. It's that
I hate you. Norm Ratman has 2 of those.
Yeah, I got a 6.5.
Well, Norm has a real beat the shit one, and then he has one that maybe it's above a 6.5. I can't remember, or it's right around there. But I'm like, that's one I'd love to own. Well, because I love that cover.
One guy, a Florida guy, dealer, bought all the copies. Okay, and he was sitting on them, so you could not touch the book. And the reason he did, I talked to the guy because I was.
Was it Rick?
Honestly, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, because I bought it a couple years ago from him. But what happened was I was talking to my Richard out at Bedrock City in Houston, and he was, he knew I was looking for one, and he said, I think the guy, he says, I know the guy, and I think he may be looking to move him. And so I went over, and he was at San Diego. So Richard went over and introduced me. I talked to the dude, and he told me the story was that when he was a kid, his grandmother made him this Shazam costume, but she used that book as the model to do this Halloween costume she made.
Oh, yeah.
He had this sort of, childhood connection. So he just went out and bought over the years every freaking copy he could get his hands on, and he was sitting on all of them. But then he had some flood damage or something happen, hurricane stuff 2 years ago, whenever it was. I think it was 2 years ago. And so he started letting them go. And of course, everybody was pouncing on it like crazy because they knew he had them. And so I was able to get us, I talked to him at San Diego, and I said, I'm looking for a mid-grade copy, I can't afford a 9.2 if you had one.
Yeah.
But, he said, well, I've got a couple that I sent to, they're mid-grade that I sent to CGC, and he had the notification on his phone that told him what the grade was. He just hadn't received it back yet. And he says, well, I got a 6.5 coming back. And I said, okay, that's what I'm interested in. Yeah. And so I ended up getting it from him. Probably paid more for it than it was worth. But a book like that, it's kind of like, a couple $100 here and there. Who's to say, right? But yeah, I want to get a copy of that. But I'd like to get it.
This cover is awesome.
But that's in a 6.0. That could be a $6,000 book. So it's not something I'm just going to go down and lay cash down for. I've got to work out a trade with cash, and I got to find a condition that I'm happy with.
And the thing with those early, so now the early Captain Marvel stuff is because the Rocket, it is going forward with the Black Adam, not Shazam, but Black Adam, and that stuff is staying kind of hot right now. I don't know if you're going to see a drop because that the first one was a success, and they got Zachary Levi on for a second one. I've got a feeling those may not drop too much, if any. I bet they all of them go up.
Either, but I think Golden Age books are so expensive to begin with. I don't really see them because of a movie or a TV to make something like that. There may be more interest in it, which then of course drives it up a bit. Right. But I think those books are so expensive right now that you have a limited market of people that want to buy them. So I think I know I can find one. It's just, can I afford one?
Right.
I mean, they're out there.
Yeah.
But I got to be able to put together the deal where I can actually get it. So.
Yeah. Dennis, got another question for you. Put your reading glasses on, old man.
Yeah. Since COVID started, comic stores have been closing like crazy. What is the current and future state for them? Not so hot. And there's a couple of reasons for it. The woke part is part of it, because those of us who don't like to buy woke books, me, that is basically a lot of the Marvel stuff right now. DC didn't get nearly as heavy involved in it. But DC's got its own challenges right now. And we're talking to, we've got 7 comic book stores right in the Charlotte area. So we're oversaturated with stores. They're all seeing the issue. DC's cutting back to 12, 13 titles now. AT&T since their takeover. So you're going to see DC do this. A lot of people are stopped buying a lot of the newer. So that's why you're seeing the monthly numbers on the books continuously drop. So the comic stores themselves have to look at other avenues of revenue. So back issues, they got to start doing toys. They got to start doing collectible card games, role-playing games, something else that us nerds enjoy doing to get them to come into the store and spend more money. And it's not on comics. Andy and I have had many discussions on this, and this is one of the reasons why we started now reviewing more of the comic books that are independents. The Boone the Dynamites, the Upshots, the Aftershocks, plus all of the independent creators that are out on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. I'm starting to see that we're moving towards that kind of a direction because we like good stories and we will spend money. We're not going to keep spending money on Star Wars when a rock is flying a ship. And literally, I had a pet rock as a kid, and that's what it reminded me of, only mine didn't fly shit. It just sat there. But I spent money on it as a kid. Today, the shops are struggling, and with all the COVID stuff, they did curbside pickup and stuff. Long story short, they're suffering. You're going to see more stores close, and I think the ones that will remain are the ones that adapt into other revenue streams. So we want to support them, but there's got to be product that we want to support. So thank goodness for some toys and Dungeons and Dragons and whatever else is out there. So that's kind of my take on it.
I totally agree with that assessment, 100%. Mm-hmm. There's just not enough comic book product going to be out there if DC continues in the way it is, and you got to figure Marvel's going to do the same thing sooner or later, that you're going to have to be selling statues and toys and collected editions and the other stuff if you want to stay in business.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah, let's end with a little, we'll end this. Don't want to take up too much of Aaron's time with a little football talk. Now we know, well, Dennis doesn't know, but Aaron's a college guy. He's not big into pro.
Okay.
He hasn't made the leap yet. He'll get there someday.
No, I know my way around the NFL. Don't shortchange me.
All right. So we know you're a Nebraska guy when it comes to college. Mm-hmm. They've pretty much been sucking, right?
Pretty much.
Just curious.
Yeah. You just want to throw that out there to rub it in a little bit.
I was like, where are you going with this? I mean, my daughter, I'm a Badger fan.
My daughter's a Clemson fan, so we don't. They're not in the same whatever division, conference, right? They're not in the same conference. So every Saturday, I've got to watch a Clemson game. I don't have a choice.
Well, they're probably win, so you hooked your wagon onto a winner though, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, next year with no Trevor Lawrence, we'll see. But their new guy,
five-star quarterback, waiting to take his place. So
yeah, but if you so who is? I know I've asked you before. I don't remember who's your pro team.
It used to be the Steelers, and when I say it used to be the Steelers, I mean back when Terry Bradshaw, and Lynn Swann, and the
holy crap, we're talking Iron Curtain days.
Yeah, but see back then players stayed with their team. Yeah. Now it's every year or two, the free agent market, guys are moving around. So and we don't have a team in Oregon, obviously. The Seahawks are up there in Seattle, but I'm not one of these guys that, we're close, so therefore they're my team. I don't give a rip. Who was I pulling for this year? Well, okay. I was pulling for Tampa Bay, not because I'm a Tom Brady fan, but because they had several Nebraska guys on their defense.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, Levante David and Ndamukong Suh were both on that defense, and so I was kind of rooting for them to win it.
So you must have been a Lions fan for a while.
No, that was hard. When they had Amir Abdullah and Ndamukong Suh, they had a couple Huskers on there. Lions fans, that's tough.
That's tough. That's a hard pill to swallow.
I like Drew Brees, so I was following New Orleans, but he's retiring, so I don't know that I'll stick with New Orleans at all. I just kind of enjoy the game on the pro level. I was rooting for Cleveland because they've sucked for so long.
So was I.
Cinderella. We all were. Yep.
I think we all were. You know whose team that was at CrossGen? Mark Pennington. So Mark Pennington, since he was a kid, loves the Browns. So when I actually know somebody that's a diehard Browns fan, I tell you, every Sunday I would think of Mark and be like, come on, Cleveland, do it for Mark. And I think next year they're just going to be better. I'm a Dallas fan and they blew it this year. Unfortunately, Dennis's team lost to the best team in football. He's a Packers fan.
Yeah, I like Green Bay. I like Aaron Rodgers. I've always been a Green Bay fan, even when I was a kid. I always liked their unis, and back in the Bart Starr days and at the tail end.
The original league MVP.
Huh?
The original league MVP.
Exactly. I like Kansas City, not because of Mahomes, but because I like their unis. So I've always been kind of a side KC fan. But yeah, I don't really have one team anymore I live or die for in the pros. I figured if I'm going to spend every Saturday in front of the TV watching Nebraska football, I can't spend every Sunday in front of the TV watching NFL.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I always have the NFL on in the background when I'm working on Sundays and things like that. But I don't, Monday night, if it's a good game, I'll watch it, that kind of thing. But I don't have necessarily a rooting interest in one particular team.
But you don't get every Nebraska game out there anyhow, do you?
Yeah, I got the Big Ten Network, so I get everything.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, dude. That's just the thing with Courtney, because she loves football. So we're like, Saturday, thank God it's just one game, Clemson. But Sunday at 1:00, she's like, "What game are we watching?" And we have Sunday tickets; we can watch any game we want.
Right.
And it goes from 1:00 to the 4:00 to the 8:00. And I'm just like,
you can spend your entire freaking day in front of the TV and not even know.
I know.
At least it's not as bad. It used to be Sunday only, and then one Monday night game. Now it's Thursday and then Sunday spread throughout the day, and so they've watered it down so you don't have, because at our house it was Sunday. Boom, got to be home by noon. Packers start, and the rest of the day is football all night.
Right. Yeah, but that's how I am on Saturday, and because I'll watch other college football besides just Nebraska if it's a good game. And I do watch. I'm a big NBA fan because I was a basketball player, so that's my sport. So, and we have the Blazers, of course. So I watch every Blazer game.
Oh, really? How are they doing?
They're fifth place in the West right now, so they're in good shape.
Really?
Considering they have massive injuries that they're fighting through, and they're still hanging in there. So, but. So that I do watch all the Blazer games, and so between watching all those games, watching the every Nebraska game, and then casually watching pro football, man, I'll tell you that sweet spot in the fall between when does the basketball starts in mid to late October, and so from October, November, December, when you've got college football, pro football, and pro basketball going on. That's a lot of time in front of the TV, my friend.
Dude, that's why Dennis and I are pretty much the same. We just watch football. So I enjoy it when it starts, but after the Super Bowl, I'm like, oh, my Sundays are back.
I know.
Yep.
So
and we're in fantasy. I mean, we're in fantasy football. So I mean that just adds a whole extra layer of, okay, I at least got to pay attention a little more.
Right. Well, and I was so happy when WandaVision was over, because I'm like, okay, now I don't have to watch that. That's time I don't have to spend in front of the TV.
Yep. Yes. Well, we might as well end on that now. Did you enjoy the ending?
I was expecting a little bit more, but I thought it was fine. I'm not a big I love the Vision as a character, a comic book character.
Yeah.
But as far as, the Vision and Wanda, that whole romance has always left me a little cold. Even when I was a kid, I was like, this guy's a robot.
Exactly.
Chicks in love with a robot. This makes no sense to me. So I thought, I don't really get into the heartbreaking romance between the two of them because it just seems so artificial to me. But I thought the show was entertaining, and I liked the mystery element of it because I wanted to kind of find out what was going on. I really thought we were going to get a Doctor Strange cameo, so I was disappointed in that. And I thought it was funny because I love to watch people speculate on these shows because I really don't care. I just watch them and whatever happens, happens, and I'm not somebody that 6 months before a movie comes out, I'm trying to figure out what the Easter eggs are or whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's how I am.
Everybody, of course, thought Mephisto or Nightmare was behind all this. And, of course, my Silver Surfer number 3 that I have in near mint condition has gone through the roof, and Mephisto doesn't even show up, so...
And I'm one of those guys. I thought it was Mephisto because the last few they kept showing the Fly, and that was the first time he appeared in Marvel Comics was as a Fly. So I thought, he's hanging on the curtain. He's hanging down in the dungeon. It's Mephisto watching, controlling it until the stupid rabbit ate it, and then I'm like, okay, maybe not.
and that's what and as soon as he brought that up, I was just like, I just don't see it. I understand it. I know where you're coming from. I don't see them junking it up with that much stuff. I think Agatha is the big bad for the whole thing. I just think it's going to be her and nobody else.
She made sense, but it just felt like it was so big that I was like, there's got to be something else going on here. But I guess what they really did, I mean, that series had two purposes. One, to sort of unleash Scarlet Witch's total power, to give us an idea of just how powerful she is, and to actually make her into the Scarlet Witch, which they couldn't do until they got the Fox rights to the X-Men, right? And to bring the Vision back, which they did.
Right.
And that's pretty much the set up Scarlet Witch's powers and bring the Vision back, and that was the whole purpose of that series, in my opinion.
See, and I think there's one more, and that is they started it in the Doctor Strange movie. So, but Marvel has to define the use and role of magic. And they started doing it with the sorcerers and, Wong, and that's why they're all color coordinated because they're all orangish, yellowish, orangish. And the Scarlet Witch is red, and the True Witch is purple. Time Stone, the time magic is green. So they're setting that up, and I think it was because you started seeing it when, like, Captain Marvel, her vision, you can see all this energy and going out, the magic. Those are like ley lines. So they don't come out and use that term, but they're setting up ley line magic, I think, in it. So that means they're setting up how magic works in the Marvel universe. Thus, how is it going to interact with Iron Man's mechanical powers, X-Men's mutant powers, et cetera, et cetera. Fantastic Four's altered human abilities.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. I mean, the one thing that I've always applauded Marvel movies for is their blueprint. They really understand how to bring in an audience and connect it. They basically created a comic book universe, filmically speaking, in the best way possible. It's something DC or Warner Brothers cannot for the life of them figure out how to do. But no, that's interesting, and I think that's probably true. I'm interested. I'm a little interested to see the Winter Soldier, the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. I really want to see Shang-Chi movie simply because I hope they're doing a 70s, Bruce Lee film. And
I would hope so, but I mean, we know it takes place present day, so making
that
kind of merging that. No, I agree. I just think it could be tough to merge that.
Yeah, I have no interest in the Eternals. I won't go see that. I have no interest in a lot of this third or fourth wave crap. I kind of want to see Doctor Strange again because I like that.
Yeah.
And Guardians 3 if they ever do it. They'll bring Warlock in, so I kind of want to see that. But this new stuff, I don't know how much interest I'll really have in it.
I think my big interest is going to be how are they bringing the X-Men in? Where is it going to start? Where are they going to start building the storylines to start tethering it out to that universe? That's what's going to pique my interest, because a lot of this, the new movie stuff, just not exciting.
Well, and also, can they make an FF movie and not screw it up? That's also.
I mean, I think now that it's Marvel, they can. They really haven't screwed up much of anything. You know, now some of the sequels haven't been good, but when it comes to just the characters in general, they've pretty much hit the nail on the head. So I think they can do it.
Yeah, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, Thor 2, weren't great.
No, but they nailed
the rest of them have been very solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, overall, when you produce that many movies, to have that many of them turn out well is remarkable, really. And the Captain America films were all really, really good, you know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, Feige, at least he had a plan and he stuck to it, and it paid off.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
We should see what the new year brings in terms of Marvel Entertainment. But I don't know that you look back on that original, you know, starting with Iron Man, the first Iron Man film, all the way through to Endgame, and you're like, was that 10 years worth of material? Something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just like, when I look back, it's kind of like me looking back on watching Lost. You know, I watched that television show for 6 years, and it was, you know, it's like I keep looking back going, that's 6 years of my life I'll never get back. I know the Marvel I enjoyed, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, when you look at it and go, am I really willing to invest another 10 years of my life to see, you know, another phase play out? I don't know if I am, you know.
See, now,
yeah, but that's different, because that's only movies. It's only a couple a year. So it's not a huge investment when you think about it, compared to a 6-year freaking TV show where you have 22 episodes. Because I was right there with you, you know, and I also think the older you get in general, the more I just stop caring. I mean, there's shows that are on like their 4th season now that I watch, that I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, yeah, I just don't care anymore. You know, like the shine, or whatever the saying is the bloom off the rose, whatever the stupid saying is. You know, because the shine. Well, you know, just as an example, one of the shows I watch is The Good Doctor. I liked it in the beginning, and I still like it because, you know, it's about this guy that's on the spectrum, you know, autism spectrum and stuff. And it is a good show, but 4 years in, it's just a procedural medical show now. You know what I mean?
Well, I burned out on Walking Dead after a few seasons, you know?
See, I'm still on Walking Dead because there's only 1 season left. And this far in, I'm going to finish it. Now, if I bailed 5 seasons ago,
I did.
But I'm still into it. I'm into it from the standpoint of, when I heard that they were doing 1 more season, I got reinvigorated to go, okay, it's like running a marathon. You don't quit at mile 24.
Right.
You go to 2 more. But if you're at mile 10 and you're like, you know what, this kind of sucks, you just walk right off the road.
But look, the Lost analogy was good, except for the reason we were like, wow, we just wasted all this time, is because the ending sucks so bad. Right. It was like Battlestar Galactica. What an awful ending for such a fabulous sci-fi show. Lost was the same thing. If that had been a home run ending on it, we would have went, you know what? I am so glad I watched every episode of that thing.
Well, it's like Sons of Anarchy.
Disappointed, and now we're second guessing. Should we have watched it? Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy. The series finale of Sons of Anarchy sucked. That was Dexter. 6 years.
Dexter.
Yeah. You know, they just shit the bed, and you're like, damn it.
I realize we've wasted way too much of her time.
I stopped with Dexter's Lab. When that was over, I didn't go.
That's it.
That was it.
All right, Aaron.
On my boots.
All right, Aaron, we're going to wrap it up with future stuff. What do you got coming down the pike? What are you doing? Pimp it, brother.
Nothing.
That's not true.
I'm in this weird state right now where I've got several proposals and possibilities, but because that's where they're at, I can't just sit there and say, oh, you know, this might happen or that might happen. which is good because all of it seems like it's going to come to fruition or fall in the crapper in April. And I can't do anything till April anyway. So I'm kind of like, I'll be doing, some live feeds and things like that. I will, or I should, let me put it this way. I'm planning right now on crowdfunding my monster horror Western superhero book.
Right.
But these other irons I have in the fire might speed that process up or push it back a little bit. So I don't want to, jump in and say, I can say this. The Garbage Man trade paperback will be coming out, I think, in November of this year.
Oh, cool.
I'm still cleared to reveal the publisher, even though I had a slip of the tongue on one of our professionals cast where I kind of slipped out a little bit, and only because they don't want me to mention it until they advertise it. So I don't know what the big deal is, but it will be coming out at the end of this year, like October, November ish. So that's a definite. Everything else is sort of up in the air right now, like the comic book industry in general.
Sure.
I've got 3 or 4 possibilities right now, but some of them may come through, none of them may come through. And if none of them come through, then the crowdfunding will be stepped up.
I hear you.
Got to do something.
I know. That's what I'm doing. So my book for everybody, First Man, goes to the printer this week. So that'll be shipping on time in April. Dennis will be over here helping me put boxes together.
There we go. Look at him.
He'll get beer out of it. Beer and pizza, his favorite food.
I mean, that's where you hire your daughter's friends to all come over and get a big line of stuffing boxes for you.
Yeah, that's what I want. Disinterested teenagers messing with comics.
Well,
yeah.
no.
Why'd this one come back? What? Email. It's bent.
No. You got to train them. You pay them. But with an expectation.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right, guys. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you to Aaron himself for being with us for this hour and a half and chatting and stuff. It was definitely fun. Yep. I enjoyed it. Learned a few things.
Me too.
Thank you all again for actually, seriously for joining us on the live stream. We'll be back Wednesday night at 7:00, doing it again, talking comic book stuff. So join us Wednesday night. And until then, everybody have a good night. And thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for